You find a concert ticket online for $49, within your budget. You click Buy Now. A countdown timer appears, 10 minutes to complete your purchase before the ticket is released. You enter your name. A new line appears. Service fee, $12.50. You pause, but the timer is ticking. You continue. Next screen. Facility charge, $5.75. You have already entered your information. You are mentally committed. You continue. You select Digital Delivery, the ticket sent to your email. Processing fee, $3.95. You are being charged $4 for the privilege of receiving an email. Your $49 ticket now costs $71.20. More than $22 in mandatory fees that were invisible when you made your decision to buy. You know this is unfair. You know you were manipulated. And you buy the ticket anyway. Because by now, it feels like you have already bought it. The countdown is at 4 minutes. Starting over on another website feels like a greater loss than accepting the inflated price. This is drip pricing. The practice of advertising a low base price and then incrementally revealing mandatory fees throughout the checkout process, so the true total appears only after you have invested time, effort, and emotional commitment. It is one of the most effective and psychologically sophisticated pricing strategies in the modern economy. And it works because it simultaneously triggers a cascade of cognitive biases that individually are manageable, but combined in a carefully engineered checkout flow are nearly impossible to resist. The $49 price sets an anchor. Every subsequent fee is evaluated not against the true total, but against that anchor. $12 feels small relative to $49. The time you have already spent triggers the sunk cost fallacy. Walking away now means wasting the effort. In the moment you selected your seats and saw them highlighted on the venue map, the endowment effect activated. Those seats became psychologically yours. The fees are no longer the price of acquiring something. They are the price of not losing something you already have. A large-scale experiment on StubHub, published in the Journal of Marketing Science by researchers from UC Berkeley, tested what happens when fees are shown up front versus dripped onto a later screen. The results were stark. Hidden fees made customers over 14% more likely to complete the purchase, and they bought tickets that were 5.5% more expensive. Drip pricing does not just increase the probability of a sale, it changes which product you buy. You choose the more expensive option because the base price comparison, the only comparison you saw when deciding, pointed you in that direction. But ticketing is only the most visible offender. The airline industry elevated drip pricing to an art form years before regulators caught up. In the early 2000s, budget carriers discovered that the most effective way to compete was not to offer the cheapest flight. It was to offer the cheapest advertised price. These are not the same thing. A budget airline advertises a flight for $29. A major carrier charges $149 for the same route. The budget carrier wins the comparison by a landslide. But the $29 fare is a skeleton. It includes nothing except the right to exist on the aircraft. Checked baggage, $25 to $40 per bag. Seat selection so you can sit with your family, $15 to $30 per person. A full-sized carry-on, another $20 to $35. Priority boarding, $12. A bottle of water on a 4-hour flight, $3. By the time you board, your $29 ticket has cost $120. Nearly the same as the major airline that included everything from the start. The budget carrier did not compete on price. It competed on the appearance of price. In 2012, the U.S. Department of Transportation recognized the problem and implemented the full fare advertising rule, requiring airlines to include all mandatory taxes and fees in advertised fares. Research confirmed it significantly benefited consumers, but the airlines adapted with remarkable creativity. They could no longer hide taxes and government fees, so they invented new categories that fell outside the regulation: bag fees, seat selection fees, boarding group fees. Technically optional, even though flying without luggage or sitting apart from your children is not optional for most families. The base fare dropped further. The gap between advertised price and actual cost widened again. The hotel industry followed the same playbook. For years, hotels across the United States advertised room rates that excluded mandatory resort fees, charges of $20 to $50 per night for amenities like pool access, Wi-Fi, or the gym. Every guest paid them, but they appeared only at checkout. A family searching for a vacation hotel compared rates across a dozen websites. The hotel advertising $189 per night looked cheaper than the one advertising $219. But the first hotel charged a $45 nightly resort fee. The second had no hidden fees. The honest hotel lost the booking because transparency made it look more expensive. This is the most corrosive effect of drip pricing. It punishes honesty. Companies that show their true price up front appear more expensive than competitors who hide fees. The transparent company loses customers not because their product is worse, but because the market rewards deception. The FTC investigated resort fees extensively. In 2017, they published a report documenting consumer harm and issued warning letters to 22 hotel operators. In December 2024, the FTC finalized a bipartisan rule, the Trade Regulation Rule on Unfair or Deceptive Fees, requiring hotels and live event ticketing companies to display all mandatory fees up front. The rule formally classified drip pricing as a form of bait and switch. But it applies only to hotels and live event ticketing. Vast sections of the economy remain unregulated. Food delivery apps advertise restaurant menu prices that are 15 to 30% higher than dining in, then stack service fees, delivery fees, and small order fees at checkout. A $12 meal becomes an $18 transaction before you add a tip. The driver delivering your food often receives a fraction of the fees you assumed were paying for the delivery itself. Online subscription services advertise monthly rates but bury annual commitments in fine print. Cancellation requires navigating a deliberately confusing series of screens, confirmation buttons disguised as cancel buttons, guilt trip messages asking if you are sure, special offers requiring you to click through 3 additional pages. The practice is so common, it has its own name: a dark pattern. Car dealerships advertise prices that exclude destination charges, dealer preparation fees, and documentation fees, adding $1,000 to $3,000 to the final number. These fees are universal and non-negotiable, but they are not on the sticker, because the sticker is what gets you onto the lot. The telecommunications industry deserves particular scrutiny. A phone plan advertised at $45 per month routinely becomes $65 after regulatory recovery fees, administrative charges, and line access fees that appear only on the first bill. A 2019 study by the Government Accountability Office found that the average American wireless bill contained fees totaling roughly 20% above the advertised rate. The fitness industry uses a variation, where the drip happens across time rather than across screens. A gym advertises membership at $19.99 per month. What the advertisement does not mention is the $49 annual maintenance fee, the $30 enrollment fee, and the clause requiring 90 days written notice to cancel. The monthly cost is accurate. The true annual cost is significantly higher. Even the software industry has adopted drip pricing through tiered feature gating. A productivity app advertises free or $9.99 per month. You sign up, build your workflow around it, import your data, and then discover that the feature you actually need is locked behind the $24.99 tier. The base price got you in. The sunk cost of your imported data and learned workflow keeps you from leaving. The real price reveals itself only after you are trapped. The wedding industry is perhaps the most emotionally weaponized drip pricing environment in existence. A venue advertises starting at $5,000. A couple falls in love with the space during a tour. The garden, the chandelier, the stone patio where they can picture their first dance. They sign a contract. Then the drip begins. Tables and chairs, $800. Linens, $400. Sound system, $600. A required event coordinator, $1,500. Valet parking, $1,000. A cake cutting fee, $2 per guest, which for 150 guests adds $300 for the privilege of slicing a cake you brought yourself. The $5,000 venue becomes $12,000. But by the time the fees reveal themselves, the couple has already announced the date, sent save the dates, and told their families. The sunk costs are not just financial, they are social. Walking away means undoing months of emotional planning. The venue knows this. The pricing is calibrated to this. The healthcare industry in the United States operates a version of drip pricing so complex it borders on absurdist theater. A patient schedules a routine procedure. The hospital provides an estimate, $2,000, covered mostly by insurance. The patient proceeds. 3 months later, the bills begin arriving. A separate charge from the anesthesiologist, who was out of network even though the hospital was in network. A facility fee, a lab fee for blood work the patient does not remember authorizing. An assistant surgeon fee for a doctor the patient never met. Each bill arrives from a different entity on a different timeline in a different envelope. The total cost bears no resemblance to the original estimate, but the procedure already happened. There is no undo button for surgery. The sunk cost is literally inside your body. The medical billing system is not technically drip pricing in the retail sense, but the psychological architecture is identical. The true cost is revealed only after reversal is impossible. Professor Vicki Morwitz of Columbia Business School, who has studied drip pricing for decades and presented her research at the White House, summarized the core problem. Telling consumers to watch out for hidden fees sounds reasonable, but it ignores the psychology of how people actually process information. It is not that consumers are careless, it is that they are human. Drip pricing does not exploit stupidity, it exploits the architecture of cognition itself. The human brain was not designed to reassemble a total price from 6 separate line items while a countdown timer is running and the sunk cost fallacy is screaming at you to finish what you started. The countdown timer deserves its own examination because it is not a logistical necessity. It is a psychological weapon. The timer activates urgency, shifting your decision-making from slow, deliberate analysis to fast, impulsive reaction. Under time pressure, you do not pause to calculate whether the total is fair. You do not open a new tab to compare. You feel the seconds draining away and you act. The timer also amplifies the endowment effect with every passing second. By minute 7, losing your tickets would feel like having them taken from you. Loss aversion, the pain of losing something you have, is a more powerful motivator than the desire to gain something you do not. Artificial scarcity works alongside the timer. Only 2 tickets left at this price appears in red text. You have no way to verify this claim. It might be true, it might be a fabrication. But combined with the countdown, It creates a panic environment where careful evaluation becomes neurologically impossible. Some jurisdictions have recognized the compound threat. The European Union's Consumer Rights Directive prohibits pre-ticked boxes for additional charges and requires transparent pricing. Australia has implemented similar protections. But these regulations are patchwork. They cover some industries in some countries while leaving vast gaps. And companies have proven remarkably creative at circumventing whatever rules exist. The fee prohibited yesterday reappears tomorrow under a different name, in a different category, on a different screen. Regulation is playing catch-up with innovation, and innovation is winning. So what can you do while the regulatory landscape remains incomplete? Calculate the total before you begin the checkout process. Search for the all-in cost, including every fee, before you enter any personal information. Once your name and email are in the form, the sunk cost fallacy has already activated. Do your comparison shopping before the clock starts. Be suspicious of any price dramatically lower than competitors. If one airline advertises a fare 60% cheaper than everyone else, the true price is almost certainly much closer to the competition. The gap between the advertised price and the actual price is where their profit lives. Recognize the countdown timer for what it is. Not a protection of your reservation, but an attack on your cognition. If a company gives you 10 minutes to decide, it is because they know a calm, unhurried consumer would make a different decision. Take the pressure as a signal to slow down, not speed up. And understand that drip pricing works precisely because it targets the intersection of multiple cognitive biases simultaneously: anchoring, sunk costs, loss aversion, time pressure, endowment effect, artificial scarcity. Each one alone is manageable. Combined in an engineered checkout flow, they are overwhelming. You are not fighting a price. You are fighting a system designed by people who understand your psychology better than you do. The only winning move is to see the system before it sees you. Because a market where you cannot compare real prices is not a free market. It is a maze, and the fees are waiting at every turn.